Liam Manning's jump from Bristol City to Norwich City has finally been formally announced. Well, it was announced last night, wasn't it? Right after we just recorded the Championship check-in podcast with Sam Parkins. So, inopportune timing, but I'm going to get across it right now and give you my take on Liam Manning and a move, essentially, from 6th placed Bristol City to 13th placed Norwich City. It's not quite used to this going from Blackburn to Darby, but I asked for your views on this when the rumours came out. And if you look at the community posts over on the Benjamin Bloom football channel, 2,000 people voted on this. Liam Manning's reported move from Bristol City to Norwich is 24% said a forward step, 15% said a backward step, 61% said a sideways step. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I would have actually voted for, spoiler alert, a forwards step. And I'll explain why as we talk about Liam Manning. And I guess it's down to who has the bigger chance of promotion. Well, obviously it was Bristol City last year because they were in the playoffs and Norwich weren't. But when you start to factor in the things that are really important, and unfortunately it is infrastructure, squad, ability to pay salary, all of that good stuff, you would probably rank Norwich just a bit higher. I mean, in the past, they've been a lot higher than Bristol City in terms of that hierarchy and who's the more attractive club to manage, because at Championship level, they've been a giant, really, Norwich, in terms of a powerhouse. Let me just get my history up here. Yeah, so plenty of bouncing and plenty of either Premier League TV money or parachute payments. Look, 11-12, 12-13, 13-14, 14-15, 15-16, 16-17 and 17-18. They had Premier League TV money or parachute payments. And then the year after, Daniel Farke and Stuart Webber had built that squad, won the league. Away you go again. This is something Norwich have done very, very well. And then you get another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years of that, that kind of run of being in what Stuart Webber, the former Norwich sporting director, described as kind of the, it's like the top 23, isn't it? You're either getting the Premier League TV money or you're in that stasis in between EFL and Premier League where you get in the parachute money. Norwich have been very, very good at that. Obviously, that has run out now. But when we talk about Manning and what he's going to be able to do, one thing Norwich have been particularly good at is keeping a strong asset base even when they've been relegated from the Premier League. They always sell players at a high ticket value. I was just looking, even last season, I mean, and for these players as well, Gabriel Sara was very good. But it looks like, I know they took a massive haircut on Christoph Jolis, but I mean, to get, it says 9.9 million euros for Adam Eder, and, over 5 million for Abu Kamara, who may turn out to be very good, but, was all potential. So Norwich always sell well, make good money, and keep a strong asset base. And I would always argue that beneath the parachute teams, you want to be that team, don't you? Okay, you haven't got the masses of TV money coming in that the three have just been relegated are going to get. But like Coventry, Middlesbrough are often always in there. Norwich, West Brom have been, but maybe have dripped off. Certainly haven't done it as well as Norwich have. But you'd certainly have them in terms of Championship jobs under, the parachute power. Norwich is a pretty good one, and I just don't have Bristol City in that kind of range at the moment. So I kind of get it. I know people are going to say that Liam Manning has now done this 2 jobs in a row and point fingers and say, abandoned ship, walk out, betrayal, deserter, use whatever language you're comfortable with. I mean, look, most of us mere mortals who don't work in massively competitive industries at elite levels like Liam Manning does may not understand just the completely ruthless nature of it. But obviously, he was at Oxford for a cup of tea. They were on the edge, weren't they? And 4 go down from League One, but he just kind of righted the ship there, and then he got busy, didn't he, in the summer, and Oxford just immediately were back up at the top of the table challenge, and he made the jump to Bristol City, which probably irked Oxford fans, and I can see why Bristol City fans would be irked now, but I can also see why he would make the jump. Two things can be true, and I think, that's the big difference between Bristol City and Norwich, and maybe back in 2018-19 when Norwich were winning the title and Bristol City were spending a pretty penny, it would have been a kind of closer conversation. Well, if Bristol City then compared to Norwich now, it would be a closer conversation. But Bristol City have obviously, decided to really have a financial reset under Nigel Pearson there. And Steve Lansdowne is still ploughing the money in, but, they're not going and spending tons of money on players and risking, potential points deductions now, which you didn't have then with PSR really, really biting. So that's a pretty long-winded first 5 minutes before we actually talk about Liam Manning, the manager, as to why you would make that jump. I get Bristol City fans will say, well, you're already there. You just finished 6th, stay and continue the job. But I also get the idea that right now, do you have more chance of finishing higher next season with Norwich or Bristol City? I'd say Norwich. But yeah, you can debate that in the comments. Just one other point on that, and Norwich fans will be very aware of this, that Bristol City, and look, in life, sometimes a door opens up, and if you're at the front of the line and you look around and you go, well, where is everyone? I'm just going to walk through this door. Why not? That was a bit Bristol City last season, wasn't it? Because of the likes of Norwich, Watford, Middlesbrough, West Brom, all finishing, in that 9th to 14th place spot. The continued failure of Stoke, who, in terms of commercials, you would say Sunderland overperformed above and got all the way through. They're in the Premier League now. And then, you would say, I don't know, the likes of Blackburn, Millwall in there were sort of equivalent to Bristol City. What I'm saying is, on paper, Bristol City don't get in there, but what was produced on the pitch in terms of performance, they did with 68 points, which is the lowest total. I did the maths for this. Someone remind me in the comments, the lowest total for years. Might even be the lowest total ever. Someone fact check me on that. So on the one hand, yes, Manning last season for Bristol City, excellent, great job. The door opened and he was the best. He was the best out of all those managers to drag his team in there. But you cannot ignore the fact that if other teams, other clubs with better squads, more potential to spend on salary and transfer fees had not underperformed, and I've named them, and Norwich is one of them, frankly, maybe that doesn't happen. So there's two sides to it. But what do I think of Manning? Well, I think he's very good, actually. And if you look through his career in English football, there's only really one bad kind of spell, and you can really explain that, can't you? I remember when so MK finished 3rd, and then they went straight down to the bottom of the table in the next season, and Manning was actually sacked and actually went on to get relegated, didn't they? And now currently back in League Two. That was obviously in League One, but in between finishing 3rd, where he had Scott Twine and Harry Darlin. Did he have Mo Issa then as well? I'm trying to think. Basically, I think 3 or 4 of his best players were immediately sold, as happens to teams that lose in the playoffs. Lost to Wickham, didn't they? Was that the game? In fact, that was very much attacking football versus defensive football. So, yes, not got good experiences in the playoffs, especially after last season as well, has he, Liam Manning? But it's great to get MK to third, carrying on the good work done by Russ Martin there beforehand. Oxford, as I've explained, were in trouble. The Carl Robinson thing was tailing off, and just avoid relegation was the first gig. And yeah, immediately, yes, Oxford were massively underperforming in League One to be down there, but he got them going straight away, didn't he? Took the walk to Bristol City. Where did Bristol City finish in Liam Manning's first season? Let me very, very quickly look that up. So 11th, and actually if you look at Bristol City there, 19th, 17th, 14th, so he immediately continued the trajectory upwards, with the financial reset under Nigel Pearson there, and 11th straight up to 6th. So he's a good manager with a good track record. What I've noticed, I think the best Bristol City performances I saw doing watch-alongs and the like, and park the playoffs for a second, because you can say, oh, what about the playoffs, Ben? Yeah, I get it. Were against, when they're in the underdog position. I remember watching them play against West Ham in a really good cup win, and they were brilliant, absolutely fantastic. Sat, really good shape, not sat in a low block, but sat, pressed, compact, go, take your chances, ruthless, very good, really good. And I remember a game against Sheffield United, not the playoff game, where I remember Sam doing that and, raving about how Bristol City played, and they equalised late and drew the game. Obviously, Sheffield United in the automatic promotion chase. But really, many people, me included, were saying they could have won that game. So, very methodical. I always remember seeing a game between Ipswich and MK back in the League One days, where Manning and McKenna were, these are the two young next big thing managers, and it was 0-0, and it was really overly methodical. It was that type of game. Obviously, Liam Manning will now have better players at his disposal than he did with, say, MK Dons down in League One. But yeah, very decent without the ball. Like to press. What we saw against Sheffield United in the playoffs, and look, obviously, Sheffield United are a Year One parachute team, and I'm saying on the other hand, Bristol City kind of snuck into the playoffs on 68 points. So, yes, you can say that on the one hand, and that Sheffield United should win that game in the matchup. But Chris Wilder did do a number on them, didn't they? They waited for the high press, played over the top of it, got the quality players, specifically Gus Harmer on the ball, and were able to... Chris Wilder learned well from that game I mentioned a couple of minutes ago. However, of course, he's got better squad, better players to work with. And I'm sure you're all screaming at me, Ben, there was a red card in the middle of leg one in that playoff game, wasn't there? So, look, I like Liam Manning very much. I think he's a good manager with a good track record. He's of the new breed, a young manager who's... I'm not saying he's not charismatic or he's dull, but I'm just saying in comparison to Mick McCarthy's and Neil Warnock's and, going right to the top, even Brian Clough's and Bobby Robson's, the massively charismatic, super character managers. It's not like that. He's more studious and more calm and softly spoken, and, it's really about the repetition and about the process and the build-up. And I would say to Norwich fans, and I haven't checked the data on this, so I may be wrong, but my feeling on Manning is it takes just a little while for everything to settle, and I'm talking a couple of few months of football. I could be wrong about that. You can check the data on that. That's just my kind of, my kind of hunch on it, having watched without actually checking the results and the data on that. That you then start to see, that looks like a Liam Manning team, and especially with that camera angle at Bristol City, you look and you go, they're very well organised, and you can see when the play turns over, everybody moving back into position. You don't always see that with teams, do you? And particularly with the pressing, like I said, quite aggressive there. So I think he's a good manager with a good track record, good age. And I guess Norwich are almost... if you think about it from a Norwich point of view, would a parachute team take Manning? Maybe. Would a Premier League team take Manning? I don't think so. But there's a bit of a sense that for Manning, if you're not going to get a parachute team, it's an upgrade, as I've said, and don't cry about that, Bristol City fans. Just an opinion. You can debate it politely in the comments if you like, but it almost feels like this is a good job for Manning. And in terms of Norwich as well, I know they've been a powerhouse at Championship level, but it is difficult when the parachute payments run out and 3 teams come in with them every season. But it's a good job. The stadium's always full there. I always kind of say they're out on their own there in Norfolk in terms of the fan base and the interest and the passion of the audience there at Norwich. Sorry, fan base. People get cross with me when I call a football fan base an audience, but you know what I'm saying, don't you? And I think as well they recruit well, Norwich, and they recruit aggressively. And these are the numbers on Transfermarkt. Last season, I know they brought in good money, didn't they? But Cernak, 11 million euros. Eurosec, 7 million euros. Forson, 4.5 million. Cordoba, 3.65 million euros. McConville, by the way, these guys are 20, 21, 21, 23, 19. Svartau, 18. Krissy, 20. Slimane, he's 23 as well. So, look, that's what Sunderland did, didn't they? Look what happened to them. Look where they're playing their football next season. So, Bristol City aren't doing that, are they? Dropping, what's the number on Transfermarkt here? 34.9 million euros on, a load of young players to build a squad around. And Liam Manning's not going to have to bed them in. They've all been there a season. By the way, they just signed a lad from Man City as well, who looks like he could be a really good signing. So, it's a good job. And, the right manager at Norwich, you know what Norwich... like the great Chris Gorham, who I'm friends with, who's a commentator for BBC Norfolk, said to me, if Norwich get a sniff of promotion, they go up. Okay, that didn't happen last time they were in the playoffs, lost to Leeds, didn't they? But generally, if they're in and around it, they get the job done. And if, by the same token, if they get a sniff of relegation, they go down. And we've seen that obviously in the Premier League, and not a million years ago, obviously went down to League One, didn't they? But it's a good job for someone there, and there's a bit of a sense. It's a good move for Manning, and it's a good move for Norwich. Ticks a lot of boxes. So, there you go. There's my take on Liam Manning. The move is done now. I know it's very easy before a ball is kicked to look at it with no evidence and say, oh, yeah, that can easily work out. And, it all kind of makes sense when nothing's gone wrong, doesn't it? And hey, at least in this instance, I think Liam Manning's probably away on holiday, isn't he? We don't have one of those press conferences where these fast-talking, smooth-talking managers sell the dream and everyone's like, oh, well, they're winning the Champions League in the next 5 years, aren't they? It's very easy to, kind of look at every managerial hire and say, that's going to work out. Guys, we know the truth. In the Championship, where are we? What date is it? It is the 4th of June. So if I sit here on the 4th of February, say, don't know how many months that is. It was about 8-9 months. How many Championship managers will have been sacked? It'll be nearly double figures if it's not double figures already. So you just have to be very, very honest about it. Do I think Liam Manning's not going to last the season at Norwich? No, that would be... I don't know what would go wrong there. And knowing how he methodically works into season 1 of any job, you just, you would see the work on the pitch even if the results weren't coming. And let's be fair, Norwich underperformed, didn't they? And 57 points, so 11 off the playoffs, even with a big underperformance. Obviously, the kind of elephant in the room I haven't mentioned in terms of Norwich is the team that finished 13th last season is not going to look like the team that Liam Manning's going to manage. And you would imagine Sainz and Sargent probably, definitely both going to go. Maybe not by the end of August. We know what this window's like, don't we? Nunes, maybe as well. I don't know. Maybe they keep one of those 3. Maybe Nunes stays. I don't know. You don't know what's going to be bid and where those players might go. But as I've just reeled off, there's plenty to build a young team there, and arguably more there than Manning had at Bristol City, who he took, albeit with 68 points only, to 6th place. There we go. I've gone round in circles and back again. Let me know your thoughts on Liam Manning to Norwich. Now that's been properly announced, especially if you're a Norwich fan, Bristol City fan, Championship fan at large. How do you think he'll do? I like it, but then I'm Mr. Positive about all of this stuff, aren't I? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And yeah, no doubt more manager news very soon.